In 1955, Detroit witnessed an unexpected reversal. While the Chevrolet Bel Air dominated the streets and the Ford Crown, Victoria was considered the new standard. No one thought Mercury, a brand positioned between Ford and Lincoln, had the ability to create a model that would force the entire industry to pay attention. Yet the 1955 Mercury Montclair did exactly that. What surprised everyone was this. The Montclair was not just a more upscale Ford. It was a bold declaration that Mercury was fully capable of standing on its own, stepping out of the shadow of the Ford Motor Company. The sharp two-tone design, the jet-age-style chrome, and an interior far more upscale than anything in its class created an effect the market had never seen before. Now let's discover why the 1955 Montclair became the biggest shock Mercury had ever produced. To understand why the Mercury Montclair exploded onto the scene with such impact, we have to go back to the atmosphere of America in the mid-1950s. After World War II, the economy boomed. Young families moved to the suburbs, and car demand surged. But the market at that time was anything but easy. Chevrolet had just launched the 1955 Bel Air with an all-new design that was powerful, modern, and infused with jet-age spirit. Ford pushed the flashy Crown Victoria with its signature glass roof. Buick, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac all entered the race of chrome, horsepower, and two-tone paint. In that blazing battle, Mercury was in the most difficult position. The brand was viewed as slightly more upscale than Ford, but not refined enough to be Lincoln. Ford Motor Company dealers began to ask, what was the real purpose of Mercury's existence? Some high-level executives even questioned whether Mercury should continue receiving investment at all. This was the crushing pressure on Mercury in 1954 to 1955. Without a true breakthrough, the brand could be downsized or quietly removed from Ford Motors' long-term plan. The Montclair was born exactly in that moment. It was not simply a new model, it was a survival gamble. Mercury had to do what many thought was impossible: create a car beautiful enough to compete with the Bel Air, upscale enough to surpass the Crown Victoria, and powerful enough to force Oldsmobile to take notice. The most striking element was the bold, two-tone body. Mercury used color sections divided by a chrome strip, running the length of the body, something car enthusiasts later called the Montclair stripe. Just a quick glance was enough to know it was not a Ford or a Chevrolet. The low, long proportions and the softly tapered rear made the car appear in motion even when standing still. The wraparound windshield was a major leap forward. Compared to Ford of the same year, Mercury looked sharper and more mature. This detail reflected light across the glass and chrome surfaces in a very science fiction movie way, perfectly matching the American mindset of the era. The wide grille with vertical vents followed a jet-inspired style, paired with a curved chrome front bumper shaped like the wings of an airplane. The twin round headlights were classic, while the rear lights were sculpted in a rounded diamond style, giving a more luxurious look and less influence from Ford's design cues. Placed next to the 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air, an unquestionable icon, the Montclair still held its own character, stronger, more upscale, and more mature. The Montclair did not try to look youthful. It wanted to enter the realm of Buick and Oldsmobile, and that made competitors nervous. The moment the door opened, occupants were stunned by the two-tone leather seats, stylishly coordinated in a way reminiscent of early Cadillac rather than a mid-level Mercury. Raised stitching, soft leather surfaces, a taller seatback, and thick cushioning created the plush comfort typical of early 1950s luxury cars. The dashboard was a major highlight. Mercury was unafraid to use nearly the entire surface for chrome, combined with an elliptical instrument cluster inspired by jet airplanes. The knobs, switches, and gear selector were designed like cockpit controls, giving the driver the feeling of operating a true piece of technology, not a family car. The town and country radio with long-range reception, multi-level heating system, and especially the optional power seat made the Montclair a sweet deal for customers wanting to upgrade from Ford, but not yet ready to jump to Lincoln. The Montclair's interior surprised many people because its build quality approached that of the early Cadillac Series 62, yet its price was significantly lower. This made buyers want to move up a class. For the first time, Mercury truly felt luxurious, not just a Ford with extra chrome. This is why dealers later recounted that many customers originally came to look at the Crown Victoria, but after stepping into the Montclair's interior, they immediately changed their mind. The Montclair was equipped with the 292 cubic inch V8 from the famous Y-block family. In theory, it was the same engine used in the Ford Fairlane, but in reality, it was very different. Mercury tuned its own ignition system, fuel mixture ratio, and valve timing, making the 292 on the Montclair more powerful than the version installed in the Ford. The output of 198 horsepower may not sound impressive today, but in 1955, it was a very clear statement that Mercury no longer wanted to live under Ford's shadow. A hallmark of the Y-block was its tall deck design, excellent heat resistance, long-distance durability, and reliability. But what made the Montclair special was the way Mercury unleashed the power that Ford usually held back. A richer fuel mixture, wider intake passages, and a deep V8 rumble created a decisive response every time the driver pressed the throttle. Anyone who has driven a Montclair shares the same impression. The car responds quicker, runs smoother, and pulls better than any Ford from the same year. Paired with this engine was the Mercury automatic transmission, a drivetrain calibrated specifically for Mercury's driving character. While the Ford-O-Matic prioritized efficiency and durability, the Mercury was smoother, accelerated more fluidly, and delivered a more luxurious feel during shifts. This is also why many customers described the Montclair as a premium Ford, but twice as enjoyable to drive. The Montclair's 0 to 60 miles per hour acceleration not only exceeded expectations in the mid-premium segment, but also approached the performance of certain Oldsmobile Rocket 5.8 models of the era. This unintentionally created an awkward truth. The Montclair was stronger than Ford wanted it to be. Ford never admitted this publicly because the company did not want to cannibalize sales of the Crown Victoria, its flagship model. When it came to driving feel, the Montclair went beyond ordinary comparisons. The suspension system was redesigned with variable rate front springs to reduce nosedive during hard braking while maintaining comfort on rough roads. Improved rubber bushings reduced vibrations entering the cabin, making the already luxurious interior even quieter. Some owners at the time said the Montclair rides like a Buick but reacts like a Ford. This compliment was no exaggeration. A lower center of gravity, wider body, and better weight distribution allowed the Montclair to corner confidently at 40 to 50 miles per hour, something rare for American cars of the 1950s. Interestingly, even Ford dealers themselves were conflicted. Many dealers avoided recommending the Montclair to Ford shoppers for two reasons. lower profit margins when selling Mercury, and the uncomfortable truth that the Montclair drove better than the Crown Victoria. A Mercury that drove better than Ford's top model was the opposite of what the company wanted in its sales logic. All of this leads to one clear conclusion. The 1955 Mercury Montclair was not just beautiful. It was stronger, smoother, and more emotional than anyone expected. It was not a more luxurious Ford. It was the car that made Ford cautious, made Chevrolet pay attention, and made Americans ask an important question. Was Mercury truly a mid-tier brand, or was it quietly rising to stand alongside bigger names? One of the elements that made the 1955 Mercury Montclair so memorable was its diverse body lineup. Each variant differed not only in design, but also told its own story about Mercury's ambition in this pivotal year. The most iconic was the Montclair two-door hardtop. The low roofline, pillarless structure, and wide glass in jet canopy style made the car stand out the moment it moved. This was the version many car enthusiasts consider the face of Mercury in the 1950s. The convertible was the choice for buyers wanting Cadillac-style luxury, but at a more accessible price. With the top down, the Montclair revealed its full two-tone interior, one of the most beautiful cabins of 1955. But the most attention-grabbing variant was the Montclair Sun Valley, a model that existed for only a short time, but left a lasting impression. The Sun Valley featured a transparent turquoise acrylic roof that allowed light to flood the cabin. It was a bold, futuristic, and unmistakably unique design. However, it also created controversy. The cabin became hotter, production costs were high, and the acrylic material scratched easily, forcing Mercury to halt production earlier than planned. This diversity is what helped the 1955 Montclair retain its appeal across generations. Each variant represented a different chapter in Mercury's breakthrough story, and all of them contributed to making the Montclair one of the brand's most collected models. The Montclair became Mercury's best-selling model in 1955, contributing a major share to the brand's total sales of more than 330,000 cars, the highest record of the entire decade. For the first time, Mercury surpassed its image as a slightly more upscale Ford and stepped up to compete directly with Buick and Oldsmobile, the names that dominated the mid-premium segment at the time. What surprised many Ford executives was the market response. Buyers did not love the Montclair simply because it was beautiful or upscale, but because it felt worth more than a Ford and cheaper than a Cadillac, creating a perfect position Mercury had never achieved before. A little-mentioned truth is that before the Montclair debuted, Ford Motor Company had seriously considered scaling back Mercury's operations to focus resources on Ford and Lincoln. But the overwhelming success of 1955 completely changed that direction. The Montclair did not just sell well, it saved the brand's future. Although the 1955 Mercury Montclair is praised as a major turning point for the brand, not everything was perfect. Behind the sparkling chrome and captivating jet-age styling were things that made owners at the time sigh, and very few dared to mention them. The first issue was fuel consumption. The 292 cubic inch V8, though strong and full of torque, was thirsty. In an era when fuel was practically as cheap as water, this was not a major problem. But for middle-class families wanting to save money, the Montclair became more of a luxury purchase than they expected. Next came the familiar story of the Y-block family: overheating and oil leaks. Narrow oil passages and the tall deck design sometimes made upper-end lubrication inefficient, leading to overheating on long drives. Mechanics of the era joked that, to love a Y-block, you must also love wiping oil off your garage floor. Another annoyance was maintenance. Some components of the Montclair, especially its Mercury-specific ignition and carburetor tuning, were complex. This made maintenance costs higher than on Fords, unintentionally slowing Mercury's sales momentum in the following years. The final issue did not come from the car itself, but from inside Ford Motor Company. Fearing that the Montclair would outsell the Crown Victoria and hurt Ford's numbers, some advertising campaigns were limited, and many Ford dealers did not prioritize showing Mercury models to new customers walking into the showroom. This prevented the Montclair, despite its excellence, from ever reaching the cultural impact of the Bel Air or the Oldsmobile 88. Today, when we look back at the 1950s, the golden age of American design, the 1955 Mercury Montclair is always remembered as a special gem. Not because it was the rarest or the most powerful, but because it marked the brief moment when Mercury reached a rare peak in its history. And that is why this model continues to hold strong value on the classic car market. In the general collector segment, the two-door hardtop variant is the most sought after because it represents the pure jet-age spirit. Well-restored examples typically range from moderate to high prices, depending on condition and originality. In the higher tier, the convertible becomes the prized piece. Convertibles that retain their original drivetrain, full-town and country options, and two-tone interiors often reach impressive prices at auctions across the United States. However, the true star is the Montclair Sun Valley, the bold turquoise acrylic roof version. Because of its short production run and extremely low survival numbers, the Sun Valley often commands the highest prices of the Montclair lineup. To many collectors, it is not just a Mercury, it is a forgotten design experiment. Beyond its rarity, the Montclair maintains its value thanks to its unmistakable 1955 styling, where every detail from chrome to two-tone paint, from rounded tail lamps to long, low proportions, reflects the post-war optimism of America. In the world of classic cars, the 1955 Montclair is not a king, but it is certainly one of the most sought-after Mercury models because it represents the brand's brief yet brilliant moment in history. Now, it is your turn. The 1955 Mercury Montclair, with its bold jet-age design, luxurious interior, and power strong enough to make even Ford cautious, has certainly left an unforgettable mark on American automotive history. But what matters more is your own experience. Have you ever seen a Montclair in person, or even sat behind the wheel? Which detail impressed you the most? The chrome stripe running along the body, the unusual Sun Valley glass roof, or the deep rumble of the 292 V8? Share your story in the comments below. Every memory and every perspective you offer helps the car community rebuild the vibrant era of Detroit. And if you want to keep unlocking America's forgotten legends, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Many more stories are waiting for you to discover. See you next time.